we got the recording going, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so this is where we were last time. Last time we talked about the concepts. 2 weeks ago, actually, not last week. Last week we focused mostly on getting the networking stuff to work within the virtual, on the virtual machine with a virtual switch. So that's what we focused on last week. I think that's a very useful exercise, and we will actually go back and re-examine what we did last week, because last week we only discovered what ports are open. We did not do anything to close the ports. So we'll talk about that next week. So I'm kind of alternating between file protection, local stuff versus networking stuff. We did talk about local file permission and ownership 2 weeks ago. So what we'll do today is this particular activity to deal with permissions and ownerships. Don't do it right now. Just kind of focus on the concepts and watch how I do it. Everything is being recorded, so you can actually watch it again if you want to. But do ask questions as I do it. Yep.
After we do the assignment, can we go back and do it again, just after we've been graded on it?
Yes, you can do it again. Yes, I set it up so it's very lenient.
Can we return to it during the rest of the course?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or at least this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
As long as it's before the due date, I think you can still do it. So it depends on whether I set up
the
a
due date. Wasn't the due date today, or?
I thought I set up a due date.
But you said you're going to extend it for people.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize there was a permission and ownership homework. I just saw the one before and I did it. And
that's okay.
It wasn't on my Moodle until tonight.
I did not enable the deadline, so it's still it's just open right now.
Okay.
Yeah. The permission one is not. The permission one I pulled it off because that one was from last time I taught the class and people were using Windows
so only first
as a platform.
Was due this
Yeah, only the first assignment is. It's not even due. I didn't set I did not set a deadline. Permission and ownership is now open. So you guys can do it. But since I'm talking about it, just kind of let me go through the process once, explain the commands, and then you can go ahead and do it. In the second half of tonight. Yep.
I was just going to mention on your YouTube videos, when you changed the microphone to the gold microphone, you lost a lot of gain. I don't know if the other microphone's over there or what.
No, that's only one microphone.
You had better sound before you switched microphones.
Oh.
Whatever that was.
That was because I used my laptop computer.
Oh, okay.
So the laptop computer is here. When I'm typing, I'm right in front of it. But Go Mic is all the way over here.
Because you were coming in. You need a little microphone, like
a lipo,
collar there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes
too expensive.
Just occasionally, there's a part where I can't hear you.
Oh,
you know
okay.
what I mean?
I think this one still picks up fairly well. Let me take a look at the volume. Because this one still it's still okay when I'm standing here. When I'm standing here, it's about the same. I can actually change the gain to 100%. Because I don't want it to be too loud either.
We can turn it down on our laptop as long as it's not distorting.
Okay. Well, I can put the mic closer to here. I just don't want to.
It was just an observation.
Okay, well, that's fine.
I don't know.
I never listen to my own lecture again. So I'll just put it here.
Right in the beginning, you'll hear it.
Okay. All right. So I will try not to clap or tap on the table, because that will be extremely annoying from your perspective. All right. So this is about permission and ownerships, and we talked about the concepts, but we never talked about the commands and how to actually do it. And this is what today we'll actually go ahead and do it. I don't want to do your homework assignment, so I'll pick a different example from what you have to do, but it will still illustrate the same concepts. So the first thing we have to do is to start up the QCal to the virtual machine, and I don't remember where I put mine. I might have to under the subfolder right there, and that has to be it. It's a 1 GB file. So we'll go ahead and get started with this one. And the first thing is, when you start up KVM, we had to start it up a little bit differently this time, because the usual way we start up KVM, okay, let's roll back a little bit. We don't need a virtual switch this time, so you don't have to go through VDE switch and swap VDE and all that stuff, because this time we do not need general purpose networking. We just need a SSH in this case, and there's a much easier way to just get SSH. So I'll illustrate how to do it. KVM-HDA base.qcal2. This is the same as last time. We are using base.qcal2 as the image file of the virtual machine's hard drive. So this part is the same. The next part is about the same. -net nic VLAN equals 0. This part is still the same, which means we want one network interface card with the virtual machine inside the virtual machine. The next one is different because this time we want to use the user mode instead of VDE mode. So this one is different. It's all explained in the homework assignment itself, so there's no need to copy everything down. Just kind of focus on the concept and ask questions. When you have questions, just stop me and ask away. Now this part is kind of important because we have to set up a host forward, which means this allows me to select a port on the host side, which is the host is the host operating system, which is Linux running here, to forward that particular port to another port in the guest operating system. So we are basically just creating a single hole so that we can communicate with the virtual machine. But it's not general. It's not like opening up the entire network. We are just opening up one single port this way. It's a whole lot easier because we don't have to set up VDE this way. And the host forwarding, we specify the interface from the host side and also the port number, which is 2222 in this case, and then we use a dash, colon, and then we specify port 22 on the other side. I think that's how we set it up. I'll double check. KVM host forward. Yep, so I think I got it. Oh, I forgot TCP. So there's a TCP all the way here and the colon. I think that's it. So this specifies I want to forward something with TCP instead of UDP. From the host side, it is at interface 127.0.0.1, which is our loopback interface. It's from port 2222 on the host side, and on the other side it is port 22. If you want to look at it from a schematic perspective, it looks kind of like this. We have the host as one box here, the virtual machine as another box here. Port 2222 here is the same as port 22 over there. It's just a regular port forwarding. But none of the other ports is forwarded. So the virtual machine has no connectivity from the outside in, but it can still communicate to the outside world because the other way around is open. This is a whole lot easier to set up. And then we'll just get started with the virtual machine, just like that. And I'll explain why we have to do that. The passphrase is no more secrets. All right. So for this homework assignment, you have to log in as root pretty much right off the bat because we have to install an additional component. What I want to do is to be able to SSH into the virtual machine. So right now I know the ports are open, so we'll go ahead and try to log into the virtual machine. So I want to illustrate how to log into the virtual machine. It is SSH, which is the SSH client in this case, -P because we want to specify which port to connect to. Now the last part is kind of confusing because it's test at 127.0.0.1, which is also known as localhost. Now this looks really confusing because it seems like I'm just logging in to the host environment itself. But that's not the case because port 2222 on the host side is actually forwarded to port 22 of the virtual machine. So by talking to port 2222 of the local host, I'm actually trying to talk to the virtual machine. But as you see, there's a problem.
There's nothing listening to port 22 on the other side?
On the other side, there's nothing.
There's no user.
Hmm?
Is there a user over there?
Yeah, test is the user on this one.
Yeah, test is a user.
Oh.
Yep. With a password of test. But it's not hooking up because on this side, okay, let me see if you can still remember. How do we know whether a particular port is being listened to and by what process? Which command do we use? We almost use it every single time. Netstat, okay? So we use netstat, and what switches do we use or options? TLNP. This one is TCP, I know for sure, so we don't have to specify the U for UDP. And you can see port 22 is not being listened here. Okay, and that's because we have not set up the SSH server yet inside the virtual machine. So the first thing you have to do with your homework assignment is to install the open SSH server, which you can do with a single command. And press the enter key. You do need internet access to do the homework assignment because it's actually grabbing that package from the Debian repository right now. So you do need internet connection to get the homework assignment done. And it's doing it pretty slowly. And the reason, I'll just let it stew for a while. The reason why we're doing this is because I want you to open up at least 3 terminals when you do your homework assignment. One terminal to log in as a particular user, so this way we can set up files and then we can test who can see the files from which account. And that's why we are trying to set this up. It will be obvious by the time we get there. Right. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to check locally and make sure that port 22 is getting listened to. And you can see right here, port 22 is being listened to by SSHD, which is the SSH daemon. And on the other side, now I can terminate this one and then try again. Oops! Ah, no! I ran the wrong command again. Oh, something. My virtual machine just died. Oh, okay. My virtual machine just died. It terminated on signal 2, so it just died. Well, I'll go ahead and restart it again. No more secrets. Okay. Now, when your machine, dies like that, the first thing you want to do is to see why it died like that. One potential problem is it ran out of memory. So we want to check whether it ran out of memory. To check that, a top is a really useful command to check a lot of things. It's basically Task Manager in Windows, but inside the text box. It shows you all the vitals of the system. It shows me right here that we have about 128 megabytes allocated to the virtual machine. Yes, 128 megabytes. When was the last time you heard about megabytes when you specify RAM? In the hundreds too. But of which only 54 megabytes is used. So I got plenty of RAM left, for the system. You can also see the load average, which is basically the little bar, in Task Manager to show you the load average. How busy is your system. So it's not busy at all right now. It's 0.15. And the other stats, we have 61 processes running, 60 are sleeping, 1 is running. So the system is really just idling. It's not really doing anything.
What would be a high load average, like a 1.0 or like?
1 means your processor is being utilized all the time, or, well, okay, I take that back. Technically speaking, having a load average of 1 means on average, at least there's one process waiting for some kind of resources, but not necessarily the processor. So you can have a load average of 1, and the processor is just twiddling its thumb because the process may be waiting on an external I/O device that is slow. But that kind of tells you, whether your applications are running fast or slow. The higher the number means the slower your system is. So we know we did not run out of RAM. So the reason why it broke is probably because I tried to open up a connection before I started the SSH server. So we'll go ahead and try again this time to log in.
Command for the memory check?
Oh, top, TOP.
Oh, TOP.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and try that again. I'm trying to remember this one.
Don't you have to reinstall it again?
Nope, I do not have to reinstall because the installation is already done on the virtual machine.
Okay, so it persists.
It's persistent.
Don't you have to make that one?
It's still not connecting, so I want to find out why it's not connecting. So on the host side, I will do the same thing. As root, I will run netstead-tlnp and pipe it through less just in case there's too much stuff to display. And it's showing me that it is listening to port 2222, and it's being listened to by KVM. So I think the port forwarding is working. It's just that it's not, for some reason, it's not connecting to the other side. We'll give it a moment. And then on the other side, I'll run the same command again. And port 22 is being listened to, so we know that it should be running. And ifconfig says it has a network port, which is a virtual network port anyway, but it is getting connections. Go ahead.
I was going to say, don't you have to make like
A switch?
yeah.
No, not in this case, because the way I specify the command here is using a user mode networking. And user mode networking is a lot easier. You don't need to set up a virtual switch in this case. But it's also more limiting because from the host side to the guest side, I'm only allowing port 2222 to forward to port 22 in this case. None of the other ports will be open in this case. I don't think I typed anything wrong. 127.0.0.1, port 2222.
Why didn't you?
Connection closed.
2228.
Why didn't you nmap it? Did you do that?
No, nmap won't show anything actually, unless I nmap the local side.
Oh, 'cause it won't like.
Yeah, because it's not a general network, so the guest actually has no exposure to the host in this case, unlike when we use VDE. That is new. Let me power off, and I'll change the option and use another port. I don't think it has to do with the port number. TCP, I missed a colon here, and that's just to specify the local network interface. So we'll go ahead and do this again. We'll use port 2223 in this case. Start up the virtual machine first. And specify 2223 on this side. Make sure we can log in. No more secrets. Okay, so everything should be working. And typo, and it's still not connecting. I will, okay, this time I'll start it with, without specifying the interface on the host side. We'll just say forward everything to any interface. As long as it's port 2223, you'll forward that to port 22 on the other side. And we'll start it. Back to the other command. It's not letting me connect. Nothing.
Try your other host interface.
The other host interface? So set up the full VD.
Well, no, on the host system, try the real interface instead of the 127.
Oh,
I did
sure.
it at home and it worked that way.
Okay.
I think that's the same as Just
Okay.
look up your IP on the host system.
So do an IF config. So you mean try this one? Okay. 165.196, 144. Port number is 2223 this time. Nope, doesn't want to connect.
Want you to specify the TCP or no?
Nope. That is strange. Because I tried this out, at home before, and everything was working. All right, so let's go ahead and do everything inside the console as much as we can. Root and all. The ISO also has PuTTY installed for those of you who want to use PuTTY. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Doesn't make any difference. It might have to do with the way KVM is started, but those were the options that I used at home too. Oh, you know what? That's okay. Server unexpectedly closed connection. So it was connecting, but it could not finish the connection. That is weird.
So you went to a Transformers theme this year.
Yep. Well, whatever my kids are watching.
The last time I took this class, we had it all based on freedom.
Yep.
Was there anything in the SSHD server config where you had to allow it from the external network?
I can check but this is a default installation. It shouldn't have anything. Yep. Go ahead.
I didn't see all the way to the edge how you, what arguments you said host forward, right?
Host forward equals TCP : 2223-:22, and that's the right syntax because we can see, the examples are here. You don't have to specify the local IP address. If you don't specify anything, it's just everything on the host side. Port 2222 forwarded to the other side, which is port 22. So you can see this, it's the same as this one. Okay, let's turn on some debug features here. -v. Okay, so we do -v, -v, -v. It seems redundant, but it's not, because every time you specify a -v, it adds, the debug level. So when you specify 3 times, it will display a lot more details than otherwise. We want to connect -p2223 to localhost. It actually has a connection. You can see connection established. It's just that the other side would not respond to it for some reason. So it had the connection open. It just won't talk. Now the other way, in case you want to diagnose networking problems, you can always use Telnet to see if you can open a connection. Telnet is a protocol, but at the same time, it's also a tool that you can use to debug other protocols. So in this case, I can use Telnet and then specify the IP address and the port number, and you can see I have connection to the local host. So that means SSHD is actually running on the other side. It just refuses to make a connection, but it's listening. So now we need to get out of this. And the problem is on my client side and not on the host side. Let's see. Okay, let's stop first. Now, once I stop and try to SSH again, oh, it still says connection established. Okay, so that's connection refused, and then connecting to localhost. That's a IPv4 versus IPv6. Version 4 versus version 6. And let's start it again. Okay, another debugging tool. Just log in locally inside the virtual machine and make sure that works first. And it let me connect. Not a problem. So we know it's working locally on the other side. We can also check the same thing here. And this one also works. So we know SSH is set up correctly on the host side. It's just the problem is, why is it not going through the port forwarding mechanism to talk to the virtual machine? I'm going to cheat a little bit and read my own notes. I don't think I missed anything, but I will go ahead and take a quick look at my own notes. It's KVM. All right. I believe it is the same. Host forward is TCP 127.0.0.1 port 2222. I can't finish the rest of the line now. Oh, this one doesn't. There we go. So this is the same as the command that I used. Alright, we'll just kind of leave that one alone for now. And for now, we'll just kind of focus on the commands, because I can still make it work. It's just very tedious to make it work when I like this.
Was the VLAN 0 in there twice?
Yeah.
On the.
Oh, you mean?
Well, I know it's in there, but was it in there twice when you executed the?
When I ran for KVM?
Yeah.
I believe so. Let me see, which terminal did I use for that? Right here. So we have VLAN 0 here, and we have VLAN 0 here as well. Yeah, I think it's identical. If I made a syntax error, it would have complained about it. So it's not a syntax error. It's somehow it's just not working. I have to diagnose the problem, but I don't want to waste any more time to do it. So I'll just go ahead and finish it, talking about the concept first, and then we'll do the diagnosis. Can you guys do it? I mean, on your side? Has anyone tried to follow the same thing here? You couldn't do it? It's not working? Same way? Okay. All right, we'll find out why it's not working. Okay. In order to do your homework assignment, you need to add a few users. So in this case, since I don't want to use the same example, I'm going to use characters from the X files as examples. So we'll have one user as molder, and I'll have another user as what is his partner's last name? Scully. Okay. Scully. And now we need an adversary. Who's an adversary of molder? The smoking man, right? So we'll say add user smoking man. All right. So now with 3 user accounts set up, let's go ahead and try to create some files. So let's say Agent Molder wants to share some information. He has some plans and he wants to share that with his partner, but not let the smoking man know about the secrets. So the first thing I want to do is to su Molder here. In other words, I can do it. It's just very tedious to do it this way. Once I log in as root, I can use su to change to any user I want without any passwords. Because when you're the root user, you have privileges to the entire system. So now I'm changing to Molder, and I'm actually doing everything as Molder in this case. I'll create a subfolder, and let's say the subfolder is called secrets. Inside secrets, I'll create a file. And I don't have to create any really important file. And I'll just say touch, give it a file name, blackslick.txt. So this is an empty file. I think it's better if I put some content into it. Okay. This is a secret, and put it into blackslick.txt. So now that file has content. The next thing I want to do is to see, okay, but who can see this file? Okay, because I created 2 additional user accounts. So the question is, which user account can see this file? What do you think? Well, root can definitely see everything, and we know Molder can see all his files. What about Scully and Smoking Man? Well, there are several factors determining who gets to see everything or who gets to see these files. The first thing we want to do is, as Molder, we can do a ls-ld and a dot, which means the local folder, the home directory of Molder. When you look at these things, okay, the rwx, do you still remember how to read this one single line when we use ls-l? Who is our user owner of this directory? Molder. Well, who is the group owner? It's also Molder. So everybody else would be considered as others, the O. How do we read this part here, the rwx? The user owner has read, write, and execute permission to the home folder. The group Molder also has read and execute, and others also have read, execute. Does everybody still remember the differences between the R flag and the X flag when it is applied to directories? One is a light switch, the other one is a key to the door lock. Which one is the light switch? The read flag is the light switch, and the X is the key to get into the room. So we can get into tricky cases where you can turn on the light but you don't have a lock to get inside the room, or you can have no light but you can walk in the room. So if you know what you're looking for, you can still find those items. But in this case, the light is on and you also have a key to the lock. Okay? And if you look at the subfolder is called secrets. It has the same permissions. So this is basically a box inside the room, but the box itself has the same properties. The light is on, and also the lock, the key of the lock is available to others. Which also means everything, all the items inside the box that is inside the room, they're all exposed. But if you want to double check, the first thing you can do is to change user to, let's say, the smoking man, because we know for sure the smoking man is not supposed to access those files. So I'm going to change to the smoking man, and I will see what I can see. The first thing I will do if I were to hack a system is to do an ls-l, and there are different ways to specify this, but you can also use this format. I use a tilde symbol here, and then the name of the user that I want to, kind of look into. So in this case, this means the home directory of Molder. And guess what? The smoking man can see what is inside the home directory of Molder. Next, well, since there's a folder called secrets, we want to check what is there too. I can see it. So this means the light is on and I have the key into the home directory as well as, well, just the home directory. The next thing or the last thing we want to do as smoking man is to say, okay, let's see what Molder knows about the black slick. So we say cat tilde Molder /secrets /blackslick.txt, and this is the content of that file. The smoking man has full access, read only, to everything that Molder has. And that's definitely not a good thing, is it? Okay. So the next thing we want to do is to go back to root again. When you use SU and you want to switch back to the account, the root account in this case, you just have to type exit and then press the enter key. Now we're back to root. So the first thing we want to do is to add a group. So we want to add a group, let's say called FBI agents, okay, or FBI agent. And whether you want to use plural or not, it's up to you. Okay. So now we have a group set up. The group is now set up, but there's no member in the group. So the next thing we want to do is to add members into the group. To do that, you use add user, and then the username first, and then the group second. So we want to add Molder to FBI agent, add user, in this case Scully, to FBI agent. So now we have the group set up. And it is time to go back to Molder's account and see if we can utilize this new setup. So we use SU Molder. We go back to Molder's account, and the first thing Molder should do is to turn off, not the command, is to turn off other access to everything in his home directory. Because other covers everybody. Anyone who is not Molder, the user Molder, or anyone within a member of the group owner of the home directory will be considered other, and that can be anyone. So the first thing he needs to do is to turn off the X permission and also the read permission of that folder. So that's O for others, minus, which means remove these permissions, RX, the read and the execute permission of the current folder, which is the home directory. Any questions about this particular command?
Why wouldn't you want to do that recursively?
Because it is not necessary. There's no need to do it recursively because once you cut off at the home directory level, the other stuff will not be visible anymore. In order to access something, it's like a long chain. You need to have the X permission everywhere along the chain in order to look inside the box, inside the box, inside the box.
So you can't just jump over.
You cannot jump over. Correct. Yep.
But that's not going to inherit those permissions into the secrets folder, right?
Well, we'll check. Okay, so we'll do this step first, and then we'll double check. Okay, so this time I'll take it even more step by step compared to the homework assignment. So we just removed read and execute permission of the home directory, and we want to double check right now and see from the smoking man's perspective what does it look like right now. So we exit back into root, and then we SU to smoking man again. And then as smoking man, I can just use the up arrow to find out what we used earlier, and permission denied. Okay. Well, maybe we can at least look at the home directory and list the items in the home directory. So we'll try that first, second. So ls molder, permission denied. And obviously the next one is going to fail as well, because I just want to look at what is in secrets. Okay. So this confirms that once you remove one X along the entire chain of a path specification, it will break the entire chain. Because it's a chain, right? If you break one link out of the entire chain, the rest of that chain is going to get cut off. Is that making any sense? Because the X permission is what allows you to go inside the box that is inside the box that's inside the box. That's the key to unlock things. If you stop it at one level, then anything that's inside that box, the first box that is already locked up, anything within that will also be locked up from the perspective of smoking man in this case. Okay. And so that's why I don't have to do it recursively. Doing it recursively is not going to hurt, because it will just be repeating the same protection to everything under that. But in this case, it's not necessary, because if you cut it off at the home directory level, you already stop permission from going in any further. Okay. Any questions at this point? Yep.
Was there like a flag that you could use when you were using mode to do it recursively?
Yeah, it's -uppercase R.
Okay.
Yeah, if you specify -uppercase R, then it will apply to the folder that you specify, and also all the subfolders and all the files within that tree.
Okay.
It can be handy, but if you do some, especially when you use the equal, it can be dangerous, because it makes all the files and subdirectories the same.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we know that the smoking man now do not have access to the secrets anymore, which is good. But we also have to double check and make sure that Scully still has access, because she's his partner, right? So we want to make sure that the other FBI agents still have access to the same file. So now we say su Scully, and we pretty much know what's going to happen in this case, because Scully, as far as the directory of Mulder is concerned, the user Scully is still considered others, right? Because I have not changed the group ownership yet. The group owner is still Mulder, and Scully is not a part of that group. So let's see what happens from Scully's perspective. We want to say ls tilde Mulder, and it is the same thing as the smoking man. It is not surprising, because Scully and smoking man at this point are really the same, because they're both considered others from the perspective of Mulder's files. Any questions at this point? So I did protect the files, but I protected a little bit too much, because people who should have access to the files now do not have access to the files anymore. One easy fix to this is to change the group ownership. Okay. If I add Scully to Mulder as a group, that will fix the problem. But that really is not the proper fix, because this fix means I'm associating Scully as a user to the group of Mulder. If I want to set this up right, I want to use the FBI agent group, so that somebody else, other agents, can also use the same group and make things more uniform. Is that making any sense? Because if I have 100 FBI agents and I use this approach, every time I add another agent, I will have to fix the group ownerships of the previous 100 accounts.
Then you have to do it in the group.
Sorry?
You do it in the group.
Yes.
And every time we change
Yes,
one
exactly. So in addition to Mulder, I would have 99 other groups to fix, to add a new agent to the organization. It does give you more granularity in terms of protection, but from the administrative perspective, it's a nightmare, because it's just you're just getting more and more work to do as you add more agents to
You
the
can
system.
make exceptions of the group by there is user 1, 2, 3, 4. They can see this file except this one and this report.
There's no except, unfortunately.
No except.
No except. So the ACL, of Linux is a little bit less general compared to Windows, because I think in Windows ACL you can specify except. Yeah, in this case we cannot, which is a problem. Okay, so we're not going to use that approach. What we'll do instead is we'll change the group ownership of Motor's file so that only FBI agents can see it. So this time I'll go back to Motor's account. And starting with the home directory, I will change it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the home directory before we make changes. Right now you can see, we made the change so that others have no access to the home directory anymore, but the group owner is still Motor. So we want to change that to FBI agent. There are two ways to do this. It's entirely up to you to determine which way you want to do it, how you want to do it. You can use shown, which is change owner. But when you use shown, you have to start with a colon first to specify you're not changing the user owner, but you're changing the group owner of a particular folder or file. So in this case, it is FBI agent, and we are changing the group owner of the current directory, which is my home directory, and that worked. The other way to do this is to use chgrp, which is change group. It's basically the same thing, except in this case, you just have to spell out the name of the group and the folder that you want to change. But they do exactly the same thing. One is basically a short form of the other. Any questions about shown and shgroup? No questions about that? Well, after you make a shown, you better double check. Okay, so you want to do another ls-ld to make sure that the group ownership has changed. Are we doing okay so far? Now there is one restriction. The restriction is, since I'm executing or running shown or shgroup as Motor, the group owner that you can change to can only be a group that Motor belongs to. You cannot change the permission to something that Motor is not a member of. Yep.
Can you do that as root?
You can do everything as root, correct. But in this case, you can also use, you can do it as a end user, because you're only changing the group to groups that the user is a member of. We can test it because I should not be able to change it to Scully because Motor is not a member of the group Scully. So we'll go ahead and give it a try, and you will see that it won't let you do it. Operation not permitted. And that makes sense, because otherwise you can allow permission that is otherwise not allowed to you to begin with, and you're allowing somebody else to have access to stuff that you are not allowed to access, and that doesn't make any sense. Are we doing okay so far? All right. So now that we have changed this ownership, we also have to change the ownership of the secrets subfolder, because remember, to get to the file called blackslick.txt, it is along a chain, and there are two links that we have to fix. The first link is the home directory of Motor, and the second link is the secrets subdirectory of the home directory. So we have to fix both of those to get it to work. So we have to do the same thing here. Shown FBI agent to the secrets subfolder of Motor's home directory. Okay. Now that this is done, I want to test it. So we can test it, as Scully first, just to make sure that Scully still has access to all those files. And the first command is successful. In other words, Scully can now see what items are in the home directory of Motor. And if this is successful, we want to push it one step further and say, can we look into the secrets subfolder and see what's there? The answer is yes. And we want to take one more step and say, can I look at the content of that file? Just because you know the file exists doesn't mean you can access that file. And the answer is yes, we can do all of the above. Okay, now it's a quick question, quick quiz. If I can do this step, do the ls, but I cannot do this step here, to look at the actual content of blackslick.txt, what can cause that to happen? I can think of at least two reasons to make that happen.
Yeah.
Execute on the folder.
The execute, exactly. If the execute bit of sequence, if the group execute bit is turned off, then you can ls, because it's just showing you, you're turning on the light and say, oh, okay, I can see that folder over there or see the file. But since you don't have the key to get into the room, when you try to say, okay, but what is the content of that file, you don't have the key to get into the room, and therefore you cannot show the content. That's reason number one. Reason number two, the file itself does not let you do it. You can set up the permission of the file itself, so it does not allow, in this case, Scully to access that file. So you can turn one bit or the other one to control the accessibility of the file itself. Yeah.
So the blackslick text, the permissions on it would be Molder and Molder still.
It is still Molder, and it still has others to have read execute access.
Okay.
So the path to get to, this is a secret, to get to blackslick.txt is actually not going through group permission all the way, because you're going through group permission for Molder's home directory. You are using group permission into secrets, but you are actually using others when it gets to the file itself. So that's a very good question. So if we had used the -R when we do the chmod, this file will still be inaccessible to Scully, because Scully is actually considered others as far as the file itself is concerned. That's a very good point. All right. So are we doing okay so far, or questions? Yep, go ahead.
When you change directories, it went into the secrets directory, not his home. Or his home directory, the secrets directory.
Right, secrets is a subdirectory of the home directory.
So why didn't it go into the home directory and went into secrets?
Because I cannot see secrets unless I can list items inside the home directory.
Oh, okay, I see, never mind. Sorry.
That's okay, not a problem. But I do want to show you graphically, what's happening here. And instead of using the conventional directory tree thing, I'm going to use the room analogy, because I think in this case it makes more sense to use the room analogy. So this is /home/Molder. This is the big room. We have a smaller room which is a subdirectory, and that's secrets. Inside secrets we have a file, and the file is blackslick.txt. Okay. So now, the question is, how can we get here? Well, this part here, Scully, is on the outside. Okay, so this is the user Scully. Scully is going through group permission to get through this door. So this is actually going through the group permission. And here, it is also the group permission to go through this door. But to actually read the file, it is using the others permission. Because the file, okay, let me show you what I mean by that. If you look at the permissions and ownership of the file itself, it is still owned by the group user Molder, not FBI agent. So that means the permission that is applicable to Scully when Scully was trying to read the file is this part here. Scully was going through the permission of others to gain access to blackslick.txt. But this is the part where it is important to note that the permission, the X permission, is getting into this entryway. The X permission is what you need to get through this entryway. So if you block one, it doesn't matter whether the other one is open or not, because you need access through every single door to get to this item.
So I didn't have the key to see other.
Right. If you don't have a key to into this room, it doesn't matter whether you have a key into that cabinet, because since you cannot get into the room, it doesn't matter anyway. There are no wormholes. Actually, I take it back. There are wormholes called symlinks, but they work differently. You cannot have a hard link to a folder, and I think that's the reason why you cannot have a hard link of a folder, because it can shortcut the path, so it becomes a security issue. All right. So that answers half the question. You know, as an FBI agent, Scully can see what Mulder has. But now we have to take a step back and say, but how about the smoking man? We don't want to accidentally allow the smoking man to read the same file here. So as smoking man, the first thing I will do is to say ls-home/Mulder, which is the same thing as saying tilde Mulder, and it's already denied. Okay, but that's okay, because ls only requires the R bit. It does not require the X bit, because I'm just turning on the light to see what's inside the room. So the smoking man says, okay, it's okay, I can remember the full path to the file that I want to access. Okay, so the smoking man will try this next. Right? Because I remember the full path, it's okay for the light switches to be gone, since I already know my way into the room, into the smaller room, and I know which item I'm trying to look for. And that also has failed, because in order to read an item here, even though you don't need to turn on the lights, you still need the key into the room. And the key into the room is now inaccessible to the smoking man. Are we doing okay so far with these concepts? Your homework assignment, is almost exactly the same as this, just using different characters. Yep.
So I was kind of like trying to do the homework with you.
Mm-hmm.
And was that the thing that wasn't working? Was the listening for the port 22 thing?
Yep.
Okay. Are you going to redo the? Because I got it wrong.
You got it wrong. You got what wrong?
SSH didn't load it.
On the
port 22's SSH, right?
SSHD. I tried to do the homework, but it told me I got a 0 out of 0. It's not even accepting.
Will you redo the homework for today?
Okay.
I don't know why I did it. I finished it before you even said, don't do it, and it gave me a 0 out of 0, and I did it like 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
And I got a 100% on the last 2 times.
Okay. You mean the one that I assigned today, the
Yes.
one about file protection?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take a look. All right, so let's go ahead and make another point. So I'm going to exit from Smoking Man and then go back to Mulder again. So I'm switching characters by using SU, and that's why we want to get the SSH to run, so we can open up one terminal per user, so you don't have to switch around using SU. So it's just a whole lot more convenient that way. But I can make it work this way too. So I'm going to go to Secrets again. And this time I want to well, actually, when I make a new file, okay, let's go ahead and make a new file. Touch. What other stuff X-File has? I cannot remember any of the episodes. Nobody can remember.
Black oil.
No, that's the Black Slick. The Black Oil Alien. I'll just make it a generic test file. Okay, so I'm creating a new file, test.txt. Now, if I look at the ownership of the folder itself, it has FBI agent as the group owner. So what do you think is the owner of test.txt? It's a trick question. Nope, that's not the case, because by default it will inherit Mulder as the group owner. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do an ls here. And you can see test.txt, which is the file that I just created, also has Mulder as a group owner. Now, with a file, it's not really that big of a problem, because Scully can still read the file through others, because Scully is still considered others. But if I make a subdirectory under secrets, it would have the same thing. In other words, it's going to be a hassle for a molder to have to fix everything after the fact. It would be much nicer if I create a new file or a new directory, it automatically inherits the ownership, the group ownership from the parent folder. Would that make more sense to you? Because in this case, if I make another subdirectory under secrets, okay, we'll call it black oil. Black oil has molder as the group owner, which is kind of troublesome because I can fix it using change group, but I have to use change group every single time I create a subdirectory. And that's not what I want to do. So we'll go back here, rs-rf black oil. Can anyone remember how to fix that problem? We kind of talked about that concept, although not a whole lot last time. The set GID flag. Okay, so we're going to use the set GID flag to make the system inherit the group ownership from the parent folder. Any questions about that one? It's just a flag, you don't have to know why it's called set GID, but it's inherits GID in this case. The command to do it is chmod, and it is G plus S because we are changing the group permission and say, okay, you can now set the GID of whatever file that we are creating. And this is going to be applied to secrets. When you do ls-ld a single dot, you can see that where the X used to be, the R-X here is now R-S. The S is basically saying that we now have set GID flag with the folder, the current folder, which is the secrets subfolder. But does it actually work? That's the question. Well, we'll go ahead and try it with a regular file first. So I'm going to remove the old test file and create a new test file, s-l test.txt. Aha, it worked. But does it work on folders? So we'll make the black oil, the ls-ld black oil. And that works too. And this is very handy because once you set up the right ownership for the parent folder, everything that you create under that folder will also inherit the right group ownership. Okay.
Why wouldn't you want to take the folder, just remove the folder group and add it only to the FBI agent group?
Because you cannot add a group to a group.
No, I mean take the folder, the user out of the group folder, and get rid of that group altogether and just add it to the FBI agent.
Because there might be some other folders where you do not want FBI agent to see. Okay, I'll illustrate that example. Okay, so right now we have, okay, let's take a look at secrets again. We have blackslick.txt, test.txt, and black oil. And everything up to this point, all FBI agents should be able to see. Okay, so let's go ahead and make another folder here, or just a regular file. You can even make it a regular file. So we'll go ahead and create a regular file called feelings for Scully. Okay, which is a file that we do not want to share with all FBI agents, but it's still a secret, so that's why it's still within the secret subfolder. The way it's set up right now, because of the set GID flag, feelings for Scully is also visible and readable to all FBI agents, which is probably not what molder wants, right? Yeah. So we want to protect that one single file so that it's different from all the other ones. And that's why we don't want to change the molder group ownership or get rid of the molder group, because now it's pretty easy to change it because we can just do a chmod, a chown. You can do it in many different ways. You can do a chmod, because if you do a chmod and you say others and group cannot have read, write, execute access to it, then you have just locked down the file. without changing the group ownership. So that's one way to fix it. The other way to fix it is to change the group ownership. Actually, I take it back. Changing the group ownership will not fix it because other agents are going through the others' ownership to get to it. So this would be an easy way to fix it. OG minus RWX. Nope. Filing. Like that. So let's go ahead and take a look from Scully's perspective, what she can see. So you can do a ls tilde molder. That still works. ls tilde molder slash secrets. Secrets. That works. Cat molder slash secrets. Let's pick one of the files that she's supposed to see. Blackslick.txt. That works. And let's check that kind of funny file name here. Does not work. So Scully set it up. Molder set up the protection right this time. Yep.
Can you make that file invisible?
Making it invisible is possible, but you cannot put it into the same directory. Okay. So what you're saying is, we want to make sure that Scully doesn't even know the existence of the file called feelings for Scully. Maybe Molder should change the file name to feelings for colleagues, so it's not named. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at what you want to do, because you don't want Scully to even see the file name, right? Or the existence of that file. We can do it. What you need to do is to change to Molder again, so that we are now Molder. Go to secrets. You cannot put that file in the same folder, because if you have the read access to that folder, it has read access, or it can list all the items within that folder. So what you need to do in this case is to create another folder here. We'll just call that private. Okay? And then what Molder needs to do is to move the files that he doesn't want anyone else to see into private, and then change the ownership or change the permissions of that folder, and remove OG-RWX. Just remove all permissions from anybody else except for himself.
For the others. For the others group.
Say again?
For the others group.
For the others and also the group itself. So now, when you do ls-ld private, oops, it still has the set GID flag here, but it's not going to be useful anymore because the execute flag is not there anymore. So there's no way to traverse into that folder. So now it should be protected from everybody. Except for Molder himself, right? So now we go back to, say, Scully's account, and then we say Molder secrets. Now you can see, Scully can still see the private subfolder, but when she tries to look into what is inside that subfolder, she would not be able to do it anymore. So the existence of the file inside the private, is completely invisible and shielded from the perspective of everybody except for Molder himself. Any other questions? Yep.
PROC, that's a directory?
PROC.
Yeah, when did you make that directory? Or /PROC/ not the root, the permissions.
Oh, I specified the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
This is a subfolder that's always there. It is actually a very important system subfolder. I'm not sure how many people remember this. When we talked about files, we talked about /proc. It's basically not a real folder. It does not correspond to the actual hard drive or anywhere on the hard drive. Did I talk about /proc? Kind of. When I talked about what a process is, I think. And also how to turn off ping response. Do you guys still remember that? How to turn off your ping response? That's when we talk about /proc. All right. Are there any other questions before we move on? What if I want to set up multiple user owners? there may be some occasions where you want to set up multiple user owners or multiple group owners. The way I set it up right now, it's not possible. You cannot do it. Okay? In other words, in Linux, by default, you can only have one single user owner of a file. You can only have one single group owner of a file. And there's no way to set up multiple, unless you turn on ACL, Access Control List. Now that's a little bit beyond the scope of this class, but I'll show you guys how to do it. I'm not going to talk much about it. To do that, you have to go back to root again. And the first thing you have to do is to say Aptitude Install Acl. What this will do is it will install 2 additional commands or programs that can deal with ACL or Access Control List. So this is the first part. It's just downloading and installing 1 additional package. It's a really small one too. And what it does is it installs get facl and set facl file access control list. So those are the commands, but it's not enabled yet. So when you say get facl, let's say of the root folder, it will still show it. It will show it correctly, but you still cannot set up multiple users as a group owner or a user owner. To turn on the actual feature, you have to basically remount the entire system. So in this case, you have to say mount, and the device is inside mapper. It's called SDA2 crypt, and then you have to specify the switch called -O, which specifies the options. You're basically looking for a remount action to turn on ACL. So once you do that, then I have just enabled access control list. So now I can use set facl to set up multiple user owners and also multiple group owners. But even so, the ACL function or mechanism is not as extensive as NTFS. So there's no way to specify, I want to include these people except for these people. And I believe you still cannot set up a group inside a group. So a group cannot be a member of another group. Can you do that with Windows?
Yes.
In NTFS? It seems to make sense to be able to do that. It's a very powerful feature.
Yeah.
But not in Linux.
It's like subnetting, almost subgrouping.
Right. It's like subdirectory. Because every group is a container, so you can have a container as a component of another container. I do not believe that ACL in Linux supports that. Any questions?
Are there other editions that would support that, or?
I don't think so. Okay, so let's look for a group here. Yeah, I don't think you can add a group to a group. We can check that here. Linux ACL group as member. I can double check that later, but I don't think it's possible.
That would be pretty handy to have.
It will be handy to have, but it's an extension that is not found in the native extension 2 or extension 3 file systems.
Somebody's not doing it.
So it's not a...
Because then you can do like temporary group memberships, so you can have a group be a temporary member for a certain amount of time to give them to do whatever they need to do for a certain amount of time, and then they get automatically kicked out.
You can also, well, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
Yep. Are there any questions about the topics that we have gone through today? You guys should be ready to do your homework, except for the fact that we cannot get SSH to work inside the live ISO. So let me stop the recording, and then I'll go ahead and fix that problem.
I was already able to do it, but I'm also using buttons, so.